January 1st, 2011, Pasadena, California. With 2 minutes left in the 2011 Rose Bowl, TCU is clinging to a 21-19 lead over Wisconsin, facing a moment that would define their program forever. As the Badgers line up for a 2-point conversion attempt, Tank Carter, a young man whose doctors once thought might never walk again, prepares to make history. To understand the magnitude of this moment, we need to go back. Back to 1995, when the Southwest Conference collapsed and TCU was left behind. While Texas, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, and Baylor were welcomed into the newly formed Big 12, the Horned Frogs began a journey through college football's wilderness. First came the WAC, then Conference USA, and finally the Mountain West. With each move, TCU rebuilt, reinvented, and grew stronger. In 1998, they hired New Mexico head coach Dennis Franchione, who brought along his defensive coordinator, Gary Patterson. When Franchione departed for Alabama after the 2000 season, TCU made the decision that would change their program forever, officially announcing Patterson as head coach on December 8, 2000. Patterson's vision was clear: build through the defense, prioritize speed over size, and develop overlooked talent into elite performers. Patterson saw what others couldn't. He realized that fast offenses and faster players meant that the old paradigm, bigger equals better, was going out of style. Never was that more clear than during TCU's 12-3 win over Texas Tech in 2006, where the Horned Frogs held the Red Raiders without a touchdown for the first time in almost 7 full seasons, prompting then head coach Mike Leach to call it, quote, the sorriest offensive effort I've ever seen, end quote. A big hit from safety Marvin White put an exclamation point on the victory, which elicited an emotional response from Patterson after the game.
I mean, our kids played hard. People have been underselling our kids for years. You know, all we ever want to do is talk about the Big 12. I'm just telling you right now, we're not the Big 12. We're just a Texas team that plays with Texas players. I mean, I got call-in show guys wanting to know how we're going to... Thursday night calling in, wondering how we're going to stop Texas Tech's offense. Well, you just saw it. Speed, baby.
Now, TCU's transformation didn't happen overnight. But by the mid-2000s, the Horned Frogs were a force. From 2005 to 2008, they won 41 games. Bigger programs started to take notice too, and they tried to hire Patterson away. Minnesota came calling. So did Kansas State, Clemson, Washington, and Tennessee. Each time, Patterson stayed, believing in what he was building in Fort Worth. But for programs outside the power conferences, success came with an asterisk. No matter how many games they won, the message from the establishment, like then Ohio State President E. Gordon Gee, was clear. You're just not good enough.
And usually I don't get up here and tell you, but I'm just telling you guys right now. You know, I get tired of being treated like a stepchild in this state and in this town. And my kids do too.
The 2009 season seemed poised to change everything. The Horned Frogs were perfect through the regular season, including wins over Clemson, Virginia, and Utah. Their defense suffocated opponents, while quarterback Andy Dalton emerged as one of the nation's most efficient passers. But when bowl selections came around, TCU found themselves matched up with Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl, another elite non-power program. The BCS Power sent TCU and Boise State to the Fiesta Bowl in a clear message to both programs. This was your table, away from the traditional powers. Like being relegated to the children's table during holiday dinner, two of the nation's most successful programs were paired against each other, rather than given a shot at the establishment. The Broncos won 17-10, but the game did little to move the needle. Instead, the college football hierarchy remained unmoved. These programs still hadn't earned their seat at the big table. So when the 2010 season began, TCU had something to prove. The schedule opened up with the primetime showdown against number 24 Oregon State at Cowboy Stadium. The Beavers, led by future NFL stars Jaquiz Rodgers and Brandon Harden, were exactly the kind of power conference opponent TCU needed to beat. Dalton, the red-headed quarterback from Katy, Texas, he put on a show. The Red Rifle, a nickname that would follow him into the NFL with the Cincinnati Bengals, threw for 175 yards and rushed for 64 more. TCU's defense held Oregon State to just 73 rushing yards total. Final score, TCU 30, Oregon State 21. Statement made. But that was just the beginning. The Horned Frogs demolished Tennessee Tech 62-7. They went to SMU, their old Southwest Conference rival, and left with a 41-24 victory. Colorado State, 27-0. Wyoming, 45-0. BYU, 31-3. Then came Baylor. The Bears had their own rising star in Robert Griffin III, who would win the Heisman Trophy the following year. But on this day, RG3 and Baylor had no answers. TCU dominated, 45-10, though Griffin would later dismiss the loss as a fluke, words that would echo through TCU's journey to proving they belonged. The season's defining regular season moment came in Salt Lake City. Number 5 Utah, like TCU, was undefeated and dreaming of crashing the BCS party. The Utes had won 21 straight home games. They had College game day in town. For them, this was their moment. Final score, TCU 47, Utah 7. It wasn't just a win. It was an annihilation that left no doubt about TCU's legitimacy. This TCU team was special at every level. Dalton was the face of the offense, but he wasn't alone. Running back Ed Wesley rushed for over 1,000 yards. Wide receiver Josh Boyce emerged as a deep threat that kept defenses honest. Jeremy Curley was a threat both as a receiver and a return specialist. But it was the defense that truly set this team apart, anchored by a linebacker whose very presence on the field was a medical miracle. Tank Carter's journey to this moment began in tragedy. At age 13, after a car struck a tree and rolled on top of him, Carter lay in a hospital bed with injuries doctors feared might be unsurvivable. A punctured diaphragm, collapsed lung, back broken in 2 places, multiple broken ribs, and massive internal injuries that required blood thinners for a year. For 6 weeks, he fought in that hospital bed. And when he finally emerged, doctors were adamant. No contact sports. But Carter, a former BMX world champion who had already claimed several national titles before leaving the sport out of boredom, wasn't content to stay on the sidelines. He started as his team's kicker. On kickoffs, I would kick, pick up the tee, and run off the field, Carter told ESPN's Richard Durrett in 2009. But that wasn't enough. By his sophomore year, he was cleared for full contact. And by his junior year, he had found his home at linebacker. TCU was his only solid Division I offer, but Gary Patterson saw what others missed. Tank is a guy that has turned out to be good at anything he's ever done, Patterson would say. Alongside Carter, linebacker Tanner Brock was a tackling machine. Wayne Daniels terrorized quarterbacks from his defensive end position. The secondary, led by TJ Johnson and Colin Jones, made throwing against TCU a dangerous proposition. By season's end, they would lead the nation in total defense, scoring defense, and passing defense. Despite the talent on the team, though, a perfect record might not have been enough. As November drew to a close, TCU was ranked number 3 in the BCS rankings behind Oregon and Auburn. Their BCS dreams hinged, though, on maintaining their position ahead of fellow BCS buster, number 4, Boise State. Enter Colin Kaepernick and the Nevada Wolfpack. On a frigid night in Reno, with temperatures at 19 degrees and snow flurries swirling, Nevada shocked the college football world. Kaepernick, whose dual-threat capabilities presaged his future NFL impact, led the Wolfpack to a 34-31 overtime victory. Boise State kicker Kyle Brotzman missed 2 field goals that would have won the game, a 26-yarder at the end of regulation and a 29-yarder in overtime.
This is turning into a disaster for Brotzman.
As Nevada fans stormed the field in Reno, the path to Pasadena was suddenly cleared for TCU, who would take on the Big Ten champs, Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin entered the Rose Bowl as more than just a football team. They were a symbol of everything TCU was fighting against. Their offensive line averaged 322 pounds, bigger than any NFL team. Their 3-headed monster at running back, Monty Ball, James White, John Clay, had combined for over 3,000 rushing yards. The Badgers had dominated in the Big Ten, sharing the conference title with Michigan State. They had beaten number 1 Ohio State and sealed their Rose Bowl berth with a crushing 70-23 victory over Northwestern. Their only loss, a 34-24 defeat at Michigan State, had been avenged through tiebreakers. Their style was simple but devastating. line up, run the ball, and dare you to stop them. The media narrative wrote itself. How could TCU's undersized defense possibly stop Wisconsin's power running game? Surprisingly, Las Vegas had TCU as slight favorites in the Rose Bowl. Expert picks were about 50-50, but still the old arguments continued to crop up. TCU hadn't faced this kind of running power. TCU hadn't faced this level of talent. Many still believed that TCU didn't belong on this stage. From the opening kick, TCU showed they weren't intimidated. They held Wisconsin to a field goal on the opening drive of the game, and then it was time for them. 77 yards in 10 plays, culminating in a 23-yard touchdown pass from Dalton to Bart Johnson. Wisconsin answered with a touchdown of their own, but TCU struck again. Dalton found Josh Boyce for a 40-yard gain, setting up a Dalton rushing touchdown, where he beat J.J. Watt to the edge to get to the goal line.
First down here. Here comes Dalton again for the end zone. Touchdown, TCU.
The game settled into a rhythm. Wisconsin would pound away with their running game. TCU would counter with speed and execution. By halftime, TCU led 14-13, but the real question remained. Could they sustain it for 30 more minutes? The third quarter brought more of the same. TCU scored on their opening drive of the quarter, culminating in a Luke Shivers touchdown run from 1 yard out to put the Frogs up 21-13. Tank Carter, the boy who wasn't supposed to play football at all, seemed to be everywhere.
Man, you know who that was? That was the Tank, baby.
With a little more than 7 minutes left in the game, TCU punted, giving Wisconsin one more opportunity to try and tie the game. Wisconsin answered with a trademark drive of their own. 10 plays, 77 yards, more than 5.5 minutes of game time off the clock, resulting in a Monty Ball 4-yard touchdown to bring Wisconsin within 2, 21-19. Within months, TCU would receive an invitation to join the Big 12, the very conference that had rejected them 15 years earlier.
I'm pleased to announce that today our Board of Trustees has accepted an invitation to join the Big 12 Athletic Conference.
Gary Patterson's post-game words captured the moment perfectly. Quote, "This is for all the small schools that wanted a chance," end quote. It wasn't just a win for TCU. It was a win for every program that had ever been told they weren't good enough, big enough, or worthy of being included. The victory validated Patterson's entire philosophy, that speed could overcome size, that player development mattered more than recruiting rankings, that heart and preparation could overcome any perceived limitations. It proved that football wasn't played on paper or in weight rooms. It was played on fields, where determination and execution mattered more than pedigree. And now, we return to those final moments. Brett Bielema, Scott Tolzien, and the Badgers had one last opportunity to draw level with the Frogs. Gary Patterson, Tank Carter, and the TCU Horned Frogs are just minutes away from making history. TCU's journey from Southwest Conference castoff to Rose Bowl champion is almost complete. But more than that, they were about to change college football forever. Just minutes after this moment, TCU will have proven that excellence knows no conference affiliation, that tradition can be built as well as inherited, and that the only limitations that hold you back are the ones you accept. And now, let's watch a moment in TCU history.
Deflected, and the onside kick is the only hope for the Badgers. Tank Carter makes the play defensively. It's the play of the game.